Hello guys, I'm back for another video. In this video I'm in RoBuilder's incredible obby. I'm hoping you guys have been watching his little tutorials. Basically he's a builder and he's been building this incredible obby in his channel. Make sure to check him out, his link will be in the description. Anyway, in this video I'll be showing you how I helped him to make the bounce pad in his obby. So if you come down here, let me show you guys real quick. It makes a nice little effect when you jump on it. So you jump on it, you get shot up, makes a nice little sound effect, and you can stay on the pad and it won't glitch out. So it's very satisfying. The point of this obby is mainly supposed to be a sort of simulation obby. So little things like this, the effects, really help out with that satisfaction effect that he's looking for. I've also helped him with other things with his game. For example, all of these spinning parts, the local scripts. The local part, sorry, and you've also got these coins that we did that we did in his last video. Can't speak. As you see, we can pick that up there. It makes a nice little effect and a sound effect. We've also got these whoosh pads. I don't know what you call them. Oh wow! Oh, glitched out there. There we go. So it makes a nice little sound effect whenever you jump on them and shoots you up. We've also been making his stage system. The stage system is part of our checkpoint series we've done previously. However, we've made some modifications to it. We've made a nice little effect, the spinning effect, and a fireworks effect. I might show you guys how I did that in a later video. However, in this video, I'll be showing you how I did the bounce pad, as you can see there. Let's get started. Okay, so I've just popped into another world here so you guys can easily see what's going on. It's not like I don't like RoBuilder's building, it's just that, you know, it's so much to look at and I just want to keep things as simple as possible. So we just have the regular base plate and the bounce pad that he expertly made. So looking inside the bounce pad, we have the actual moving parts themselves. These are the parts that jump up when you stand on it. And then the coil is separate because instead of moving the position, this is just moving the position of these bits here, we need to move this, like the scale of this. Now I did notice something weird with coding this actually, is that if you actually try to move the size of this part, which is what you'd normally do, if you'd think that you just change the actual size of this part. However, it glitched out, it was weird. So what we did instead is this mesh has the scale. Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, scale. I'm blind. And what we did is we increased this scale here, and that seemed to solve the issue. So that's how the script is coded to work. Anyway, so again, we have the model itself, which we move the position of, and then the scaled mesh. Inside this model here, we have a part that is welded to it. So basically, we only wanted to actually move one part to keep things as like resource friendly as possible. If you start moving like, you know, if you move every part individually, things can get out of sync. So what we tried to do is we tried to only move one part, and we welded the part that we just welded the other part to it. So it's just quite nice and simple, script wise. Again, so that's basically his bounce pad. So you have the coil, you have the ring around the outside, and then you have the parts that you change the position of. Okay, so the first thing we need to do inside the bounce pad is we need to add some values. So these are just values that you can do to actually change the power and the settings of the bounce pad themselves. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add an int value, and this int value is going to be the power. This is going to be, you know, if you sounded it, how high is it going to shoot you up, the power of it. Now we use 70 in the baseline of his world. I think that's about like roughly what you put it as. However, you can also increase that or decrease that, whatever you want. And then you have the time. Now this is going to be a number value because basically int values you can't have them like 70.5. You see it doesn't like it. So you can only generally have integers, which are whole numbers. Now, number values, you can have them as like 7.5, and as you see, it doesn't error. This is the error from before, not a new one. However, the time that you normally have it as, that I found was nice, was 0.1. This is basically, so this value is called time. Basically, how we launch the player up is with a body velocity. So we just give the player a body velocity and they basically get shot up. And this is the amount of time the body velocity is going to be set on the player, and then it gets deleted after that amount of time. So generally, if you wanted to give the player lots of control, then you would have this that time value low. If you wanted the player to be shut up uncontrollably, like they wouldn't have any time to react or even move their character, then you'd have that quite high and have the power value low. And then you also have another value, bounce in progress. This is a ball value. We use this in the code. You don't actually change any of the settings. You just keep that as false, and a ball value is just true or false. So that's basically the bounce pad. Now what I want to do before we go into the scripting is quickly put the bounce pad into a folder named bounce pads. Something like that, just because then you can duplicate them, and then we can just duplicate them. There we go. No issue. So basically, it knows which parts in your game are bounce pads, because we're going to be looking inside this bounce pads folder. Now, to make the animations, we're going to do it locally. This is basically because we don't want other players to see the bounce animation from when a player stands on it. So let's say if like you're here, you're just sitting here and someone else is bouncing, you won't actually see that animations, which is what you want, because then it looks weird if you're bouncing at the same time. Like it just looks mismatched. This is how lots of OBBY games works. OBBY games such as Adventure Forward. I was using that as like an example for RoBuilder. It's sort of that simulator sort of vibe game. Anyway, let's begin the scripting. So again, as it's locally, we have to use local scripts. That's all we're going to be using for this. So I'm just going to set a local script into starter players. This script is going to run whenever a player joins the game. Okay, so inside the script, we're going to need to get a few things. The first thing is the tween service. That's because you use the tween service whenever you're smoothly moving a part. Well, I do at least. You can use other methods, but I like using the tween service. The next thing we need is the player service, and then we're just going to get the local player that the script is being run on. The next thing we're going to need to do is get the bounce pad tween infos. I'm just going to do it here. Sorry, I'm going to do it here because I find it just instead of specifying this each time the player jumps on the pad, we're just going to do it at the top here, so it's a bit more efficient. Basically, whenever you tween an object, this is the amount of time the tween takes effect. So you're going to be tweening upwards. Oh, I didn't name it correctly. Ooh. Basically, when you're tweening upwards, this is the bounce upwards, and then we're going to have another one that tweens downwards. So basically, we use tweens whenever we want to move an object smoothly. So this is the tween that goes upwards, so this moves this bit here upwards, and then the other tween, this one, let's rename it again, tweens it downwards. You see, with half the amount of time it takes to go downwards. The next thing we do is we're going to get the bounce sound. Now I haven't actually inserted this yet. This just needs to be a nice little sound effect. So I'm going to nick the one from the game real quick. RoBuilder doesn't mind. I'm just going to name it bounce effect, and the ID is just there. There we go. Nice little effect. Okay, so we've now got the bounce effect, and we've got the sound in the Explorer. The next thing we're going to do, we actually need to get this effect from the workspace. Basically, we need to get it now so we can play it later. Perfect. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is we actually need to write the code that sees when a player touches the bounce pad. Now that's really easy to do. I'm going to get the bounce pad folder first, bounce pads, and then I'm going to get each individual bounce pad. If I can spell. Basically, we're looping through all of the different bounce pads in the bounce pad folder with this bit of code here. Oh. And then all we're seeing is bounce pad.touch. We're seeing when someone touches the bounce pad. Oh, I just realized I did something stupid again. We need to get the primary part of the bounce pad. This part is basically, see, the primary part of the model is this bit here. So whenever you touch this part, it will launch you. No other parts. So say we touch the side bits here, it won't launch you, only when we jump in the center. There we go. So we're basically seeing when anybody or any part touches that primary part of the bounce pad. The next thing we need to see is if that part that touches the bounce pad is a character. And the best way to do that is to see if a character belongs to a player. And we do that just by doing this. So basically saying, get the character, and if the character links to a player, then continue. The next thing we need to do is as this is being run locally, we only want to run it if the player, if the character is the character that belongs to the local script, or the player that belongs to the local script. So we only want to run it for the player that's seeing it, if that makes sense. So we don't want it to bounce up if someone else jumps on it. We only want to bounce it up if you jump on it. So we basically need to specify if the player who touched it is our player. And this is the player who touched it, and this is our player up here. And then when they do that, then we need to run the bounce pad effect. Now I'm going to make a little function for that. So I'm just going to name it bounce pad effect. This is going to run the function. There we go. Now we haven't actually made the function yet, so it's going to go yellow and say the function doesn't exist. Let's make the function now. There we go. As inside this function, we need to do a few things. The first we need to do is we actually need to run the tweens I was talking to you about that open and close the bounce pad. The second of all is we need to actually give the player the body velocity I was talking to you about that launches them into the air. The third thing we need to do is we need to put the tweens down again. So it goes up, and they go down, and they get the body velocity effect. And another thing we need to do is play the sound. There's a few things we're preparing for here. The first thing we're going to need is going to be the character again, and we can probably just actually get the character from here. There we go. So you've got the character. We'll then need to get the humanoid root part of the character. I'll do find first child. This is like the I was talking about primary parts of the model of the bounce pad. So in each character there's a primary part as well, and the primary part is the humanoid root part. So we can actually just simplify this. The primary part. The next thing to do is we need to see if it actually exists, because sometimes it can glitch out. The next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to see if a bounce is already in progress. Let's say if they touch it, and so they bounce, and if they say they touch it again, let's say when the tween goes upwards, and it registers the touch event again, we don't want it running a second bounce effect, because it would glitch out. So we only want to run the bounce effect once. So we're going to basically see if the player's already run the bounce effect recently. And we're doing this with the bounce in progress value we have here. Let's get that value first. Temp bounce in progress. And this is going to be the bounce pad model. Wait for child. There we go. So we're going to say if that value is false. So if it isn't in progress, then run the code. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make it true. We don't want it running twice. The next thing we do is actually get the pad itself, and this pad is the primary part. So this is the pad that we're talking about here. So we can get the bounce pad models pad, primary part. There we can't spell. So we're getting the primary part of the bounce pad, which is this part here, which is again this little pad bit there. Now the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to make the pad can collide false. Now you don't have to do this, but I found that it gave less glitches if you set it to false, because obviously if we're launching the player upwards, if the pad is can collide true and the pad touches the player as they're shot upwards, it might glitch out. So basically we want to remove that, the chance of that happening completely, and just make it can collide false when the bounce is in progress. You don't have to do that, but I just found it was less glitchy. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the body velocity thing I was talking to you about. This is the thing that actually shoots the player upwards. So you have two parts of this: the actual animation itself, so the nice upping and down like bit that moves, that does the pad thing that goes upwards and changes the coil size as well. And then you also have the part of the script that shoots the player upwards. So I'm going to give this a few settings. I'm going to call it the bounce velocity. I did spell velocity right. Yes. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to give it the velocity vectors 3, which is what you use for velocities. And I'm going to get the power from here. So as you can see, we're basically launching the player in the Y direction, which is this direction. So you know you have X, Y, and Z. So we're launching the player in the Y direction, which is the up direction, from the power value which we specified in the bounce pad before. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to give it a maximum of force. This can basically be whatever. I'm just going to make this infinite basically. Oh, .new. I'm going to do math.huge, which is basically a huge number. So we're making the max force to be infinite. We're also going to do the same thing for the power, which is actually simplified to P. Then after we do that, we're going to change the parent of the body velocity, the bounce velocity, to the humanoid root part, which is again the character's primary part. So again, a little overview of what we're doing here. We're making a body velocity, which is the actual thing that moves the player upwards, and we're making the velocity, the power of it, the velocity of it, the bounce velocity's power value, which is what we specified here. The other bits don't really make a difference that much. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to write a function that removes the bounce velocity after the time. So the first thing we need to do is get the time value, which is going to be easy as changing this to time. So we're getting this value here. Oh, I'm doing the wrong thing. I need this to be the bounce pad model. The bounce pad model, which is here, and they're guessing the time and power. Bit of voice crack there. And then after we're going to do that, after we wait that duration, we're then just going to remove the bounce velocity with bounce velocity.destroy. The next thing we actually need to do is the coil animation itself. This is the thing, as again, that moves this upwards like that, and then also increases the scale of the mesh like this. There we go. So that's the sort of thing we're going to be doing in the next bit of the script, and then downwards again, obviously. Now we're going to do that with first of all, we're going to get the coil mesh. So again, this is the mesh here. I mean, we're going to need to be changing the scale of that to make the bounce like animation. Now here are the tweens that I was talking to you about before. So we're going to need to have 4 tweens. The first 2 are going to be the opening animations, one for the coil mesh and then the other one for the pad. Then the other 2 are going to be closing the coil mesh and the pad. So that's 4 in total. Let's start with the coil mesh first. So we're going to create a new tween from the tween service of the coil mesh. We're going to use the bounce pad open info. But all we're going to do is change the scale of it to be vector 3.new. Again, the scale is a vector here, as you can see. Where is it? Here we go. We're going to get the current scale of it in the X direction, we're going to get the current scale of it in the Y direction. And then we're going to change it. Just this dot mesh. I'm going to change it in the Z direction. Now I'm not completely sure why it's in the Z direction. I'm assuming this part has some sort of, oh yeah, it's got some sort of orientation. This is the coil part here. But if it didn't have the orientation, then it would be in the Y direction. But we're actually moving it in the X. Yeah, as you can see, with no orientation of the parts, it goes upwards when you change the mesh scale in the Y direction. Here we go. So that's our first tween completed. Now for our second tween, we're going to be changing the pad. Now again, the pad is this bit here. I might just name that pad for you guys. So inside the pad, we want to move the primary part, as this part here, which is like the star bit, is welded to the part, which basically means if we move this part, then this other part will follow it automatically. Now if you're trying to do this for yourself, you basically have to weld them together with this, and this part can't be anchored. But this part has to be anchored. Okay. Again, we're going to be getting the pad, we're going to get the open tween info, and then what we're going to be changing is the C frame, which is basically the position and the rotation. Now the reason why we're not just changing the position of it, because you can just do that individually, is because welds don't update when you change the position. However, they do update if you change the C frame, which is a bit weird, I know, but that's what we have to deal with. So yeah, all we're doing here is we're getting the current C frame, the current position and current orientation of the pad, and then we're just adding 4 in the upwards direction. So 4 steps in the upwards direction. That's all we're doing. Then all we're going to do is now run these tweens here. Like so. Then let's wait like 0.1 seconds before we're progressing to the next bit. After then 0.1 seconds, let's change the can collide of the pad to be true, so you can hit it again. This is basically, sorry, basically the only reason why we change the can collide to false is to remove that awkward glitch where the coil, the pad touches the player due to the tweens after they are given. So basically, the pad catches up with the player in midair, which then causes the nice satisfaction effect to go away because it would glitch out. So after that, the possibility that goes away after 0.1 seconds, we might as well just change the pad can collide to be true again. Then we'll wait another 0.4 seconds. This is basically the delay that we're using after I can't speak. So after the pad goes up, so this is in the upwards position here. We can actually try it now. Actually, give it a little try. There we go. So this is the pad is now in the upwards position, as you can see. So you go to the next one, and the next one. So the pad is now in the upwards position. We now need to put it downwards again. So we're going to wait 0.4 seconds in the upwards position, and then we're going to make some new tweens. That then move it down again. The first thing we need to do is get the coil mesh. We're going to get the closed tween info instead of the open tween info now. The only difference between that is that the closed one is shorter. And then all we're going to do is change the scale again, but instead of going upwards like +2, we're going to go down by +2. So basically we can just copy this whole thing again pretty much, but then just change it. So let's do it real quick. I'm going to change this to close. And then instead of going up by 2, increasing the scale, we're going to decrease the scale. So that's a tween that should make the coil. So the coil is now like large like this. All we're going to do is make it smaller again, which is what that tween does. The next tween we're going to do is with the pad. We need only to move the pad downwards again. What we're going to do here is we're going to change the C frame to be like this again, but instead of going upwards, we're going to go downwards. And then we're going to run these tweens afterwards. There we go. And then all we're going to do now is wait for the final tween to be completed. And then we're going to run. And then we're going to change the value that says if it's in progress to be false. Perfect. Okay. Now let's see if it works. Perfect. So it works perfectly. As you can see, we now go upwards. The tweens actually take effect, so they go up and down, and we get shot in the air. The only thing that we're missing now is the sound effect. All we need to do here is go like here and run bounce sound and then play it. Let's try it again. Perfect. As you can see, this is a perfect representation of what RoBuilder's is in his game here, and it's what I helped him with. Again, the code for this will be in our Discord server if you want to take a look at it. I'm hoping this video helps you for anyone who's looking at this sort of bounce pad effect. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and just for RoBuilder's sake. Later.